Du Young sat in his dark office, staring at the computer screens that lined his desk. The soft blue light from the monitors lit up his tired face. Outside his window, the tall buildings of Neo-Seoul reached into the night sky. He had been working at the Sleep Research Center for 5 years, but he had never seen anything like this before. "This can't be right," he said to himself, pushing his glasses up his nose. He looked at the brainwave patterns on his screen again. 10 different patients, all showing the same dream pattern at exactly the same time. This had never happened before in the history of sleep research. The clock on his wall showed 11:30 p.m. Most of his staff had gone home hours ago, but one person was still there. Jia, his fellow researcher, knocked on his door. "You're still looking at those patterns?" she asked, walking in with 2 cups of coffee. She put 1 cup on his desk and sat down in the chair next to him. "Look at this," Du Young said, pointing to his screen. "All these patients are dreaming the same thing. They're all seeing the same story in their dreams. How is this possible?" Jia leaned closer to look at the data. Her eyes widened. "When did this start?" "At exactly 10:45 p.m., Du Young said, "right when the rain started." Jia quickly pulled up another screen on her tablet. "That's interesting. I've been studying rain patterns and brain activity for the past year. There's something special about tonight's rain." Du Young turned to look out his window. The rain was falling steadily, creating a soft pattern against the glass. The lights of Neo-Seoul made the raindrops shine like tiny stars. Suddenly, their phones began to buzz. Messages were coming in from the night staff in the sleep lab. Du Young read the first message out loud. "Patient 4 is talking in their sleep. They're telling a story about ancient beings who use rain to connect with humans." Before he could say more, another message came in. Then another, and another. 5 different patients were all telling the same story in their sleep. "We need to record this," Jia said, already pulling out her recording device. They rushed to the sleep lab on the floor below. In the lab, they found their night staff standing between the patient rooms, looking confused and worried. Through the observation windows, they could see several patients lying in their beds, all speaking softly in their sleep. Du Young went to the first room. Inside, Hey Newell, their youngest patient, was speaking clearly in his sleep. "The Hypnos have always been here. They use the rain to share their stories. They've been waiting for us to remember how to listen." In the next room, another patient was saying the exact same words. And in the next room, and the next. Jia checked her tablet again. "The rain. It's not normal rain. The water molecules are arranged in a pattern I've never seen before." Du Young looked at his colleague, then back at the sleeping patients. In all his years of studying sleep and dreams, he had never imagined something like this could happen. But here it was, happening right in front of him. "We need to document everything," he said. "Every word, every brainwave, every drop of this rain. Something big is happening, Jia. Something that could change everything we know about human consciousness." As they worked to record all the data, the rain continued to fall outside. And in their beds, the patients kept telling their story, their voices joining together like a soft chorus in the quiet night. The mystery of the Hypnos and their rain-carried stories was just beginning to unfold in the heart of Neo-Seoul. The next morning, dark clouds still covered Neo-Seoul. Du Young had not slept at all, and neither had Jia. They sat in the research center's meeting room, surrounded by screens showing data from the night before. "All the recordings are exactly the same," Jia said, playing back the patient's sleep talking. "Every word, every pause, even the way they breathed. It's like they were all reading from the same script." Du Young rubbed his tired eyes. "Have the patients woken up yet?" "Most of them have," Jia replied. "But here's the strange part. None of them remembered telling the story. They only remember feeling peaceful, like they had shared a wonderful experience with others." The rain outside grew stronger. Thunder rolled across the sky, making the windows shake slightly. As if on cue, their phones started buzzing again. Messages from the patient floors were coming in rapidly. "It's happening again," Du Young said, standing up quickly. "But it's different this time." They rushed to the sleep lab. In their beds, the patients who had fallen back asleep were talking again. But this time, they weren't just telling the same story. They were having a conversation with each other. "The rain carries memories," one patient said. "We must learn to listen," another responded. "The old ways are returning," a third added. How Newell, the teenage patient, sat up in his bed, his eyes still closed. His voice was clearer than the others. "I can see them all. We're in a great library made of rain. Each drop holds a different story." Do Young and Jaya watched in amazement. The patients were responding to each other despite being in separate rooms. It was as if they were all meeting in some shared space in their dreams. Jaya checked her instruments. The rain pattern has changed again. The water molecules, they're dancing. I've never seen anything like this. Suddenly, Hey Newell turned his head toward them, his eyes still closed. "You can join us," he said. "Just listen to the rain. The stories are waiting for you too." Do Young felt a strange sensation, like a gentle pull in his mind. The sound of the rain seemed to grow louder, more musical. Next to him, Jaya swayed slightly. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. "It's like the rain is singing." Before Do Young could answer, the lights in the lab flickered. All the monitoring equipment began showing unusual readings. The patient's brain waves were synchronizing even more strongly than before. "Something big is coming," Hey Newell announced, his voice filled with wonder. "The Hypnos are going to show us something important." The rain intensified, drumming against the windows like thousands of tiny fingers. Do Young and Jaya found themselves growing more and more aware of each raindrop sound. It wasn't just noise anymore. It felt like words, like memories, like stories waiting to be heard. "We should document this," Du Young said, trying to stay focused. But his voice sounded distant, even to himself. The rain's song was becoming harder to ignore. Jaya reached for her tablet, but her movements were slow, dreamlike. "Do Young," she said softly, "I think we're about to become part of the experiment." As the storm grew stronger outside, the boundary between waking and dreaming began to blur. In their separate rooms, the patients continued their shared conversation, their voices rising and falling like waves. And in the hallway, Do Young and Jaya stood at the edge of a discovery that would change their understanding of human consciousness forever. The rain kept falling, and with each drop, the veil between reality and dreams grew thinner. The first true connection was about to begin. The research center was quiet except for the steady sound of rain outside. 3 days had passed since Do Young and Jaya experienced their first shared dream. They had learned something important. People born during certain rain patterns could connect to the dream network more easily than others. Do Young sat in his office, looking through birth records of their patients. He had dark circles under his eyes, but he couldn't stop working. The discovery was too important. "I found another one," he said as Jaya walked in. Hey Newell was born during a rare rain pattern. That's why his connection is so strong. Jaya placed a cup of hot tea on his desk. "That explains a lot. But there's something else you need to see." She led Do Young down to the hospital's basement. There, in a small office, they found Sun Mai, the elderly cleaning lady who had worked at the hospital for 30 years. Sun Mai was waiting for them with a stack of old notebooks on her desk. "I heard you've been experiencing the rain dreams," Sun Mai said with a gentle smile. "I've been having them my whole life." Do Young and Jaya looked at each other in surprise. Sun Mai opened one of her notebooks. Every page was filled with detailed writing. "I've written down every shared dream since I was a young girl," Sun Mai explained. "The Hypnos have been teaching us for generations. We just forgot how to listen." She showed them her notebooks. There were hundreds of stories, all received through dreams during rainstorms. Some were about ancient wisdom, others about healing practices, and many about the connection between all living things. "There are others like me," Sunmai said, "We call ourselves rain speakers. We're born with the ability to hear the stories in the rain." As if responding to her words, the rain outside grew stronger. Newell appeared at the door, his eyes bright with excitement. "I felt you all down here," he said. "The rain told me where to find you." Sunmai smiled at the boy. "You have a strong connection, young one. Stronger than any I've seen in many years." Suddenly, the lights in the basement flickered. The rain's sound changed, becoming more musical. Du Young felt the familiar pull in his mind, and he could tell the others felt it too. "It's starting again," Jaya whispered. They all sat down, forming a circle in the small office. Sunmai took out a new notebook and a pen. "We should record this," she said. "The stories are important." As the rain played its melody against the building, they felt their minds connecting. This time, the experience was clearer than before. They could see each other in the shared dream space, which looked like a vast library made of flowing water. "Look at all the stories," Newell said in wonder, his voice echoing both in the dream and in the real world. "Each raindrop holds a different memory." Sunmai's hand moved across her notebook, writing quickly. "The Hypnos are not separate from us," she said as she wrote. "They are the part of humanity that remembers how to share dreams. We all have this ability. We just need to remember how to use it." Do Young watched in amazement as more people appeared in the dream library. Other rain speakers from around the world were joining them, drawn together by the storm. "This is just the beginning," Jaya said softly. "There's so much more to learn." As they sat in the basement office, connected through the rain song, they knew they were part of something much bigger than themselves. The ancient network of rain speakers was growing stronger, and the forgotten wisdom of humanity was starting to flow once again, one raindrop at a time. The research center's library was filled with old books and scrolls. Myrae, an expert in ancient Korean texts, carefully opened a dusty manuscript on the reading table. Du Young, Jia, and Sunmai watched with great interest. "These texts are over 500 years old," Myrae explained, her fingers moving carefully over the yellowed pages. "They describe people called rain listeners who could share memories through dreams during rainstorms." Outside, the rain continued to fall steadily. It had been raining for a week now, the longest continuous rainfall in Neo Seoul's history. "Look at this," Myrae said, pointing to a detailed drawing in the manuscript. It showed people sleeping in a circle while rain fell around them. Above their heads, lines connected them to each other, forming a pattern like a web. "That's exactly what we see in our shared dreams," Jaya said with excitement. "The connection lines look just like that." Myrae turned another page and began to read. "It says here that the rain listeners had special rules they followed. They called them the ancient protocols. These rules helped them connect more strongly to the dream network." Newell walked into the library, carrying more old books. Despite being young, he had become an important part of their research team. "I found something too," he said, opening one of his books. "These symbols match the patterns we see in the rain." As they studied the ancient texts, Myrae suddenly felt the familiar pull of the dream network. The others felt it too. The rain outside had changed its rhythm. "We should try what the protocols suggest," Sunmai said. She had brought her notebooks and was comparing them to the ancient texts. "The old ways might make our connection stronger." Following the manuscript's instructions, they arranged themselves in a circle on the library floor. The protocol said they should face east, with their hands touching the ground. "The text says to breathe in time with the rain," Myrae read from the manuscript. "Let your thoughts flow like water." They closed their eyes and followed the instructions. The sound of rain grew louder, clearer. In their shared dream space, they saw the library transform. The walls became waterfalls of memories, and the air filled with floating symbols like the ones in the ancient books. "The protocols are working," Newell said, his voice full of wonder. "I can see so much more now." Through their enhanced connection, they began to understand more about the Hypnos. The ancient texts were right. These weren't separate beings, but rather humanity's own forgotten ability to share consciousness through natural elements. Mei Rei's knowledge of ancient languages helped them decode more of the shared memories. Our ancestors knew about this, she said. They built their entire societies around these connections. But somehow we forgot. As they sat in their circle, following the ancient protocols, more pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The manuscripts contained specific times for connecting, special words to focus their thoughts, and maps of how the rain patterns affected the dream network. We need to share this knowledge, Du Young said, but carefully. The protocols exist for a reason. They help protect the network and those who use it. The rain's song grew stronger, and they felt more presences joining their circle. Other rain speakers around the world were discovering the ancient protocols too. Together, they were rebuilding a network of consciousness that had been sleeping for centuries. The research center's main conference room was filled with screens showing weather patterns from around the world. Du Young stood at the front, presenting their findings to a group that now included Taiwan, a quantum physicist who had traveled from Busan to study the rain's unusual properties. The shared dreams are happening everywhere now, Du Young explained, pointing to a world map covered in blue dots. Each dot represented a confirmed case of shared dreaming during rainfall, but only when the rain falls in specific patterns. Taiwan adjusted his glasses and studied the data on his tablet. The water molecules in these rain patterns are behaving in ways that defy our current understanding of physics, he said. They're forming information networks in the air. Jaya brought up a new set of images on the main screen. They showed the same rain patterns appearing in different parts of the world. London, Mumbai, Sydney, and Rio de Janeiro. In each location, people were experiencing the same shared dreams during these synchronized rainfalls. Look at this, she said, playing a video from a weather satellite. The rain clouds are moving in perfect harmony across continents. It's as if they're following an invisible pattern. Hamnul sat quietly in the corner, his eyes closed. He had become more sensitive to the dream network, able to feel connections even when he was awake. More people are joining, he said softly. I can feel them connecting from all over the world. Taiwan walked to the window, watching the rainfall. The water droplets are carrying quantum information, he explained. Each raindrop is like a tiny computer, storing and transmitting memories and experiences. But how is this possible on such a large scale? The answer came from an unexpected source. Sun Mai entered the room carrying one of her oldest notebooks. The ancient texts speak of a time when all rain carried stories, she said. The Hypnos didn't create this network. They're showing us how to use what was always there. As if confirming her words, the rain outside changed its rhythm. The screens in the conference room flickered, and everyone felt the familiar pull of an approaching shared dream. But this time, it was stronger than ever. In their shared dream space, they found themselves in a vast chamber made of flowing water. People from different countries were appearing around them, their thoughts automatically translating across languages. The rain had created a universal translator. This is incredible, Taiwan said, both in the dream and in the real world. The rain isn't just carrying memories, it's creating a global network of human consciousness. Through this expanded network, they learned that similar research teams had formed around the world. Scientists, historians, and rain speakers were all working together to understand and document this phenomenon. We need to coordinate our efforts, Du Young said, addressing the international gathering in their shared dream. This is too important to study separately. The rain fell stronger, and the connections grew clearer. Through their combined understanding of quantum physics, ancient wisdom, and modern technology, they were beginning to grasp how the rain network actually worked. It was both simpler and more complex than they had imagined, a natural system that humanity had evolved with but had somehow forgotten. As the global pattern of shared dreams expanded, one thing became clear. The rain wasn't just connecting them. It was awakening something that had been sleeping in human consciousness for thousands of years. The research center's observation room was silent except for the gentle beeping of monitoring equipment. Newell lay on a bed in the center, connected to machines that measured his brain activity. Du Young, Jia, and Ta-Wan watched through a glass window as the young man prepared to attempt something unprecedented. "Are you ready, Newell?" Du Young asked through the intercom. Newell nodded. "I can feel the network even without the rain now," he said calmly. "It's always there, just waiting to be accessed." Over the past weeks, Newell's abilities had grown stronger. He could now enter the shared dream space at will, something they had thought impossible without rainfall. More surprisingly, he could guide others into the network, acting as a bridge between minds. Jaya studied the monitors. His brain waves are already changing. He's accessing the network. In the observation room, Newell closed his eyes. The machines recorded a sudden spike in activity. Through the dream network, he began to share what he was discovering about the true nature of the Hypnos. "They're not separate beings," his voice came through the speakers. "The Hypnos is us, our own forgotten ability. Every human has it, sleeping in their DNA. The rain just helps us remember." As Newell spoke, the others felt themselves being gently pulled into the shared dream space. The observation room dissolved around them, replaced by a vast landscape of flowing information. "Look," Newell said, pointing to streams of light that flowed around them like rivers. "These connections have always been here. Our modern world just made too much noise for us to notice them." Tai-Wan moved closer to one of the streams, his scientific mind trying to understand what he was seeing. "The electromagnetic interference," he said suddenly. "All our electronic devices, our wireless signals, they've been drowning out these natural connections." Jaya opened her eyes wide with understanding. "That's why the rain helps. Water droplets can block modern electromagnetic interference, creating quiet spaces where we can hear the natural network again." Through Newell's enhanced abilities, they could now see the network more clearly than ever before. It wasn't just humans who were connected. All living things were part of it. Trees, animals, even the smallest insects contributed to the vast web of shared consciousness. "Our ancestors knew about this," Newell explained, moving through the dream space with growing confidence. "They built their societies around these natural connections. But as we developed technology, we gradually lost touch with the network." Du Young watched as more people began appearing in the shared space, rain speakers from around the world, drawn to Newell's strong connection. "Can we restore these abilities?" he asked. "We already are," Newell replied. "Every time it rains, more people remember. The network is rebuilding itself." But even as they celebrated this discovery, a new concern emerged. Through the network, they sensed others watching. People with different intentions for this rediscovered human ability. "Someone's trying to interfere with the network," Newell said, his voice growing serious. "They want to control it, to use it for their own purposes." The shared dream space flickered, like static on an old television. Something was disrupting the natural flow of information. The awakening of humanity's forgotten abilities had drawn attention. Attention that could put everything they had discovered at risk. The top floor of Global Communications Tower gleamed in the morning sun. Du Young and his team sat in a large conference room, facing Sang-Ho, the CEO of World Digital Networks. The business leader had called this meeting to discuss their research on the RAIN network. "Your discovery is remarkable," Sang-Ho said, standing at the head of the polished table. "We want to help you develop it. With our technology, we could control and enhance these connections, make them available to everyone, even without rain." Du Young looked at his team. Jia, Ta-Wan, Newell, and Sunmei sat quietly, listening. They had known this meeting was coming, but that didn't make it easier. "Think of the possibilities," Sang-Ho continued, pressing a button that lowered a large screen. "We could create permanent dream networks. People could share memories and experiences anytime. We could revolutionize communication, education, even entertainment. The screen showed images of people wearing special headsets, connected to machines that simulated the RAIN network. It looked impressive, but something about it felt wrong to Do Young. The network isn't meant to be controlled, Newell said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. It's a natural part of us, like breathing. Trying to control it would change what it is. Sang-ho smiled, but his eyes were cold. Progress requires control, young man. We've already filed patents on the basic technology. We can proceed with or without your help. Jaya stood up, her voice firm. You can't patent nature. The RAIN network belongs to everyone. Everything can be owned, Sang-ho replied. The question is by whom? Work with us, and you'll have access to unlimited resources. Refuse, and we'll develop it ourselves. Through their growing connection to the network, Do Young's team could sense Sang-ho's true intentions. The company didn't want to help people connect. They wanted to control how people connected. You're already trying to interfere with the natural network, Tadawon said, understanding now. Those disruptions we've been detecting, they're coming from your experiments. Sun Lei opened one of her notebooks. The ancient texts warn about this. Previous civilizations tried to control the network. It always led to disaster. Sang-ho's smile faded. The old ways are inefficient. We can improve them. Make them profitable. Outside the tower's windows, dark clouds began gathering. A storm was approaching Neo-Seoul. Do Young could feel the network strengthening, countless minds connecting through the coming rain. This is bigger than profit, Do Young said, standing up. The RAIN network is helping humanity remember something we lost. We won't help you turn it into a product. Then you leave us no choice, Sang-ho said, pressing another button. Security guards entered the room. We'll need your research materials, all of them. But at that moment, the rain began to fall. Through the network, millions of connected minds felt what was happening. RAIN speakers around the world turned their attention to Neo-Seoul. Newell closed his eyes. Connecting to the global network. We're not alone, he said softly. Everyone is watching. Everyone is choosing. The choice was clear now. They could help Sang-ho's company control and profit from humanity's rediscovered ability, or they could protect it, keeping it free and natural as it was meant to be. The rain fell harder, carrying their decision to every connected mind across the planet. 1 month after their confrontation with Sang-ho, Do Young stood at his office window in the research center. The morning sun was rising over Neo-Seoul, its light reflecting off the wet streets below. The decision they had made that day had changed everything. Instead of letting World Digital Networks control the RAIN network, Do Young's team had shared their research with everyone. They had posted all their findings online, including the ancient protocols and the scientific data. The response had been extraordinary. The latest numbers are in, Jaya said, walking into his office with her tablet. Over 10 million people have connected to the network during yesterday's synchronized rainfall. The ancient protocols are being translated into 60 different languages. Do Young smiled. How are the training centers doing? Better than we expected, Jaya replied. Sun Lei and Newell have trained over 1,000 new instructors. They're teaching people how to connect safely and responsibly. The research center had transformed into the first RAIN Speaker Academy. People came from all over the world to learn about their rediscovered abilities. Sun Lei taught the ancient wisdom, while Newell helped people make their first connections to the network. Taiwan had made an important discovery too. He found a way to protect the natural network from electronic interference without trying to control it. The solution was simple. Certain areas were kept free of wireless signals during rainstorms, creating safe spaces for people to connect. There's something you need to see, Jaya said, leading Do Young to the main hall. The large room was filled with people sitting in circles, following the ancient protocols. On screens around the walls, similar groups could be seen in locations across the world. The first global connection is about to begin, she explained. Weather satellites showed a remarkable sight. Rain clouds were forming in perfect patterns across the planet. It was time for humanity's first worldwide shared dream. Newell stood in the center of the main hall. He had grown confident in his role as a guide for new rain speakers. "Remember," he said to the gathered people, "don't try to control the connection. Let it flow naturally, like the rain itself." As the synchronized rainfall began, millions of minds opened to the network. In hospitals, sick people found comfort in shared dreams of healing. In schools, children learned by experiencing the memories of great teachers. In conflict zones, people began to understand each other in ways that went beyond words. Do Young felt the familiar pull of the network, stronger than ever before. In the shared dream space, he could see countless points of light, each representing a connected mind. The hypnotist had been right. This ability had always been part of being human. "Look at this," Todd once said, checking his instruments. "The rain patterns are perfectly harmonized worldwide. It's like the planet itself is helping us connect." Through the network, they could sense Sang-ho and his company watching. But they had no power here. The rain network had grown too vast, too natural, and too free to be controlled or owned by anyone. As millions experienced their first shared dream, a new understanding spread across humanity. The rain had helped them remember not just how to connect, but why connection mattered. They were rediscovering what their ancestors had known, that every drop of rain could carry a story, and every story could change the world. The new dawn had arrived, not as a product to be sold, but as a gift to be shared, carried by the rain itself.